All right. Hello again. Welcome back to Media Monday. My name is John Fernal. I was reminded on the weekend in a podcast session I was taking part in that sometimes it's important to introduce yourself. I'm not sure I've mentioned my names many times. So, yes, that's me. This is my Media Monday series, and today I'm going to talk about the seventh concept. So, this is the second to last concept. This concept says that form and content are closely related in the media. Pretty simple idea. One that over time I think became a lot more meaningful to me. Really early on in my teaching career, I just kind of taught it very simply, but since then, I think I've discovered how it applies to lots of different things. So, sorry, got some noises around here. Here's what the concept says. Another Marshall McLuhan quote. As Marshall McLuhan noted, the medium is the message. So that's really the line that ties with this. Each medium has its own grammar and bias and codifies reality in its own particular way. Thus, different media reporting the same event will create different impressions and different messages. All right? So in some ways, the simple way, the medium is the message. McLuhan liked to mess around with words, and I think, in fact, one of his books was called the medium is the massage, because it was a misprint and he liked it so much. But in this case, I'm going to take the lighter kind of version of it, which is that the medium biases the message, right? So depending on which medium you get your information from, you are going to get a different sense of what happened. I used to say to my students, imagine that you witnessed something. This happened a couple times, or there was one time in particular where we were sitting in our classroom and someone pointed out that a bunch of cows were out on our football field. Apparently there had been a crash down near the mall and they had made their way up towards our school. And I said to them, watch, okay, you're experiencing this now personally, right? You see this, you're getting knowledge of the incident. Then tonight, go home and turn on the radio and listen to the way it's reported. Tomorrow, open the newspaper and read what the story's about. And if by chance a television news crew shows up, watch it on TV. We didn't at the time. We used to have a couple TV people here, but we don't really get much reporting on TV these days. And what I said to them was that you will discover that each one of those gives a different impression, and it will be different from what you experienced as well. All right, that goes back to the version of reality. On television, they're going to focus on, well, again, it even depends on how quickly they can get it out, right? Radio is probably the fastest. They can have it on, top of the hour. Television is probably going to be at least a few hours later, maybe the nightly news, maybe the next day. Newspaper is definitely going to be the next day. And of course, we should add in internet, which is really, internet news now takes all of those things and does a little bit of radio sometimes, does a little bit of television, has visuals. But depending on where you get it, you're going to get a different impression. So television is going to focus on the visuals, right? They're going to have about half an hour, 22 minutes after commercials, and they're going to, depending on where they put the story, is going to tell us something. The visuals are going to tell us something. We're going to see actual footage, right? Whereas the radio, of course, we're not. It's going to be much shorter. Certainly if it's like a local news station, you might get 5 minutes at the top of the hour. Your story is going to have to be told in a minute. So you might get a description of what happened. You might get, one person with a little sound bite saying, oh, I was scared of the cows. But that's basically going to be it. The next day in the newspaper, you're going to get a longer report, more detail, maybe more interviews, maybe a photo, maybe not. And all of those things impact the way that we see it. Sorry, how it's biased, how the story is biased. It could be a completely different feeling about the story, right? And that I've certainly experienced that before. So they will present more or less the same subjects, but there will be a great difference in how they present them. So that's the simple part. And early on in my career, I would have simply taught it that way. One of the things I actually did that I thought illustrated this was there's a great New York Times documentary on, if you remember way back. If you don't know the story, you've probably at least heard of it, of a woman who spilled coffee. She ordered a hot coffee from McDonald's and then spilled it on her lap and then sued them. And, the story is she became a multimillionaire. Well, the documentary actually does a nice job because it kind of takes us from the real story, at least their version of the real story, and then shows how over time the story got shorter and shorter and smaller, right? And of course, details were left out. And the reality was that, first of all, it wasn't just a simple little burn. It was serious burns. And in the documentary, they show shots of the burns that she suffered. And She wasn't driving, as a lot of people thought. She was a passenger. But the important thing is that McDonald's had been warned repeatedly, I think something like 700 times, to turn the temperature of their coffee down, that it was dangerous, and they refused to. So, and then in the end, after, she actually didn't want money, all that, the millions that they claimed she got. She just wanted enough to cover her expenses. And of course they refused, which meant she had to go to court. And it was the judge in the end who gave her a rather large sum of money, which then got appealed. And I think in the documentary they said that she may have ended up with, it was certainly less than $1 million. It might have only been $400,000. But she never really lived that down, because of course as that got smaller and smaller, from a half-page news article to a 2-minute television news report to eventually a 140-character tweet, today, a lot of those details get left out, and it simply becomes, a woman hits the jackpot, spills coffee on herself, and wins all this money, gets all this money. When that's just one version of reality, and it's not very accurate either. But I thought it did a good job of illustrating this exact concept. But as I taught the course, I realized that I think there was more to it than that. I read a little bit more of McLuhan. He certainly sees it as, I heard this idea once, I'm not sure if it's his or not, but that we make the tools and then the tools make us. So he would talk about a medium like the light bulb, which isn't traditionally something we think about as a medium, but I think that's the example he used. And, and once the light bulb was created, it changed so many things, because suddenly, you weren't limited to daylight hours to do things. You could work all night. You just had more opportunity, and that changed our way of living. I think I've also read, I don't know if he said this, but, the idea of the internet, when the internet was created, it almost became like our nervous system, right? That we have all these feelers out around the world. That ties in with his idea of the global village and other things as well. But that medium has the medium itself, not the messages that it carries, but the medium has become the message. That it's the important thing. It's the thing that shapes us, right? I often thought about how this applies to our institutions. Of course, being in a school, I would often say to my students, think about this school and how that idea, the medium, the school itself, is the message, right? Here we are trying to teach you things on a daily basis, teach you your English, your math, your English media, your history, whatever it is. But really the strongest messages, the ones that stick, are the ones that come through the medium, the way that we do things, right? The fact that we have 30 kids sit in rows facing us, right, to the teacher. Right there is a message. I'm the important one, you're not. I would sometimes mess with my students early on and, sit amongst them and just to see what would happen, right? And I would try to change the way my class was set up. One year I kind of angled all the tables, and sure enough, every night the custodians would come in and straighten them up, because even they were, they had been conditioned to think that this is the way that it works. They all knew that it's important to raise their hands if they have to speak. They should ask to go to the bathroom. All of these different things that really have nothing to do with what we're actually trying to teach, but they have the strongest impact on them, right? And I think this applies also to much of what we do, right? The media, the medium again becomes more important than the actual messages that we're delivering. So even though we're reading something on the internet, it's the internet itself that becomes the important thing, right? Becomes the thing that shapes us. So my understanding became that how we do something often teaches us more than what we actually do or say, all right? And again, applies to lots of different things. But I'm going to leave this one there. It's short and sweet. Used to be even shorter. But again, think about how that applies to things that you do, right? The way that you deliver a message, whether it's as a parent, whether it's, as a business owner, whatever it is, often has much more powerful meaning than the actual message that you're delivering. All right. Thanks again for watching, for tuning in. Like I said, this is our second last one more next week, which is very short and sweet. And then I think I'll do a little kind of summary and explain, once you're through this, what you can do with the information. As always, if you have questions, please ask them below. If you can subscribe and share, that would be great. If you can go to goodnoise.ca and have a look at what I'm doing there, that would be great too. I'm not sure where this is going yet. But I do have plans for other videos after I'm through this media stuff. So thanks again. Hope you have a great week, and we'll see you next week.